The Festival of New Yams was the pride of Igbo. Every year, the villagers would gather under the giant iroko tree to celebrate. Apanal, the sacred talking drum, would lead the songs, its deep voice commanding the skies to listen. But this year, Apanal was silent. It was Oja, the drummer, who first noticed. He had lifted his hands to strike the drum, his palms sweaty with excitement. The crowd was waiting, children already dancing in anticipation. But when he struck, there was no sound, not even a dull thud. Oja frowned, tapping the drum again. Silence. He leaned closer, inspecting the drum like a worried father. Apanal, don't disgrace me, oh, he muttered. The villagers began to murmur. The elders exchanged uneasy glances. Apanal had never failed before. It was the voice of Igbo, passed down through generations. Maybe it needs a drink, joked Adagok, the village palm wine tapper, breaking the tension. Pour some palm wine on it. Laughter rippled through the crowd, but it was nervous laughter. Even Adagok's usual charm couldn't ease the fear creeping into everyone's hearts. Chief Balagan, the oldest man in the village, stepped forward. His voice was sharp, cutting through the noise. This is no joke. When Apanal refuses to sing, it is a warning. Something terrible is coming. The laughter died instantly. Mothers pulled their children closer. Men stood straighter, gripping their walking sticks and farm tools. What kind of warning? Someone whispered. Chief Balagan looked at the crowd, his eyes grave. We must consult the oracle, he said. The sun had barely risen when Allahan the hunter left for the forbidden forest. He was a tall, fearless man with a laugh louder than the village bell. While others worried about the drum, Allahan saw an opportunity to prove his bravery. I will find the answer in the forest, he declared boldly. Let the oracle keep her riddles. I am a man of action. His wife, Ronk, rolled her eyes. Your action will put us all in trouble, she said, but Allahan was already strapping his bow to his back. Don't wait up, he called to her, grinning. The forbidden forest was thick with mystery. The trees were so tall they blocked the sun, and every sound seemed to echo endlessly. Birds cawed in strange tones, and the ground was soft and damp. Allahan was not afraid. He whistled a happy tune, his footsteps light. But as he ventured deeper, the forest grew colder. The air smelled strange, like burnt wood and sour fruit. Then he saw it, a strange pile of bones, arranged in a perfect circle. Allahan stopped whistling. His heart skipped, but he forced a laugh. Is this how spirits decorate now? He said aloud, though his voice shook slightly. Suddenly, the wind picked up, whispering through the trees like 1,000 voices. Leave, it seemed to say. Leave now. Allahan froze, gripping his bow tightly. He wanted to laugh again, to crack a joke, but his mouth was dry. The forest no longer felt like a place for men. For the first time in his life, Allahan turned around and ran. The wind blew harder than usual that evening, slamming doors and scattering palm fronds across Igbo. As the villagers gathered in the square to discuss the silent drum, an old man appeared at the edge of the crowd. His face was as wrinkled as dried leather, and his eyes were cloudy, but his voice was sharp like a spear. They are coming, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. The crowd turned to him, Children clung to their mothers, and the men instinctively reached for their machetes. "Who is coming?" Chief Balagan asked, stepping forward. "The ones who silenced your drum," the old man said. "They came to my village first. We thought we could fight them, but they are not men. They are shadows." The villagers exchanged uneasy glances. "What do you mean by shadows?" one man asked nervously. "They come at night," the old man continued, "and they do not speak. They take what they want, and they leave destruction behind." He paused, his voice trembling. "Your drum was their warning. If you do not prepare, Igbo will fall like my village." "Where is your village?" someone shouted. The old man's head dropped. "Gone," he whispered. "There is nothing left." The air grew heavy. Even the children, usually restless, sat still. "What must we do?" Chief Balagan asked, his voice shaking slightly. The old man looked up, his cloudy eyes piercing. "Survive." The next day, news spread that a joke, the daughter of Adeneo the yam merchant, had gone missing. She was supposed to marry a Kintoy, the blacksmith's son, in 3 days. Her bride price, a hefty sum of yams, colonnuts, and gold, had already been paid. "She didn't run away," Adeneo growled, pacing back and forth in his compound. "A joke is not that kind of girl." "Maybe she got cold feet," someone whispered, earning a sharp glare from Adeneo. A search party was quickly formed. The villagers combed the area, calling a joke's name. They found nothing except a strange riddle scratched into the dirt near the river. "When the drums go silent, a bride will be taken, and shadows will rise." "What kind of nonsense is this?" a Kintoy said angrily, kicking at the dirt. "Who writes riddles instead of leaving clues?" The men murmured among themselves, but no one had an answer. The mood in the village darkened. "First the drum, now this," Allahan said, shaking his head. "It's as if trouble is dancing on our heads." Desperate for answers, the villagers turned to the oracle of Olajmer. Her shrine was deep in the forest, a place where only the brave dared to go. Chief Balagan led the group, carrying offerings of yams, kola nuts, and a white goat. When they arrived, the oracle was waiting. Her eyes glowed like burning coals, and her voice was otherworldly. "You come because you are afraid," she said without looking up. "Yes, wise one," Chief Balagan said, bowing low. "The drum is silent. A joke is missing, and a strange old man warns of shadows. What does it all mean?" The oracle was quiet for a moment, her fingers tracing patterns in the dust. Then she spoke. "When the drums go silent, the earth will roar, and shadows will rise," she said, repeating the riddle. "But what does that mean?" Chief Balagan asked, frustrated. The oracle pointed to the sky. "Your ancestors have given you a warning. Prepare your warriors, fortify your homes, and guard your hearts. The test is coming, and not everyone will survive." The villagers exchanged worried glances. Allahan, always quick with humor, tried to lighten the mood. "Wise one, if its shadows were fighting, can we borrow a lantern?" The oracle didn't laugh. "Light will not save you," she said. "Only unity will." The villagers left the shrine in silence, the weight of the oracle's words pressing heavily on their minds. The Gungun festival was the biggest celebration in Igbo, a time when the spirits of ancestors were believed to visit the living. Masked dancers in colorful robes swirled and leaped, their movements mimicking the rhythms of life and death. The whole village came out to honor the spirits and forget their fears for a while. But that year, something was different. One masked dancer moved in a way no human should. His steps were too swift, his turns too sharp, and when he spun, the air grew cold. The villagers clapped nervously, unsure whether to cheer or run. This one dances like he has no bones, Allahan joked, nudging his friend. But as the dancer drew closer to the crowd, his mask slipped just a little. What lay beneath wasn't a face. It was a shadow, a swirling, shapeless void. The laughter died instantly. The drummer missed a beat. Children screamed and scattered, their mothers rushing after them. "What is that?" someone shouted, their voice shaking. The shadow dancer stopped moving. It turned its head slowly, scanning the crowd. Then it raised one arm, and the ground beneath it cracked like thunder. Chief Balagan, standing at the front, raised his staff. "Warriors, protect the people," he shouted. Allahan and the other hunters grabbed their weapons and charged at the shadow. But their arrows passed right through it, hitting nothing. The shadow laughed, a low, bone-chilling sound that made even the bravest men shiver. "You cannot fight what you cannot see," it said, its voice echoing like the wind. Then it vanished, leaving behind only silence and fear. The next morning, Chief Balagan called an emergency meeting. The oracle's warning was clear now. Shadows were among them, and they weren't going away. "We must go into the forbidden forest and find the source of this evil," Balagan declared. Allahan, though shaken by the events of the festival, nodded. "If it's shadows, I'll bring my brightest torch," he said, trying to ease the tension. The villagers chuckled weakly, but the fear in their hearts remained. The hunters set off at dawn, armed with bows, machetes, and courage. The forest was darker than ever, its trees towering like silent guards. Even the birds seemed afraid to sing. Allahan led the way, his sharp eyes scanning for danger. The deeper they went, the stranger the forest became. The air grew colder, and a faint whispering sound surrounded them. "Do you hear that?" one of the hunters asked, his voice trembling. Allahan nodded. "It's like the trees are talking." The whispers grew louder, forming words. "Turn back. You are not welcome here." Allahan gripped his machete tighter. "We didn't come for welcome songs," he muttered. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shifted. Roots shot up like snakes, wrapping around one of the hunters. He screamed, thrashing wildly. "Cut him free!" Allahan shouted, slashing at the roots. But for every root he cut, two more appeared. The whispers turned into laughter, dark and mocking. "You cannot win," the voices said. "This is our domain." Allahan's mind raced. He remembered the oracle's words. "Only unity will save you." "Everyone grab hands," he shouted. The hunters hesitated, confused. "Just do it," Allahan barked. They formed a circle, gripping each other tightly. The laughter faded, and the roots stopped moving. For a moment, there was silence. Then, from the shadows, a pair of glowing red eyes appeared. A deep voice rumbled, "You may have survived today, but the battle is far from over." The hunters fled the forest, their hearts pounding. Allahan, usually full of jokes, was silent the whole way back. The fight wasn't over, and they all knew it. The hunters returned from the forest pale and shaken. As they shared their story in the village square, murmurs filled the air. Fear gripped everyone, but something else began to fester, suspicion. "Someone among us must have angered the spirits," shouted Atagok, the palm wine tapper. "This is not ordinary." "What are you saying?" A Kintoi snapped, still bitter over a joke's disappearance. "I'm saying someone has brought this curse upon us," Atagok said. "How else do you explain the shadows and the silent drum?" Before long, the village was in chaos. Fingers pointed in every direction, old grudges resurfaced, and accusations flew like arrows. "Enough!" Chief Balagan's voice boomed, silencing the crowd. "We will not fight among ourselves. The oracles said we must be united. Anyone who acts against the village will face my wrath." But unity was already cracking. That night, Allahan heard whispers outside his hut. He peered out and saw shadows moving, not spirits, but people. Villagers were sneaking into the forest, ignoring Balagan's warning. Who would be foolish enough to go there at night? Allahan muttered, grabbing his bow. He followed quietly and discovered the truth. One of the elders, Ojibona, was meeting with something in the forest. A dark, shadowy figure loomed over him, whispering words Allahan couldn't hear. Allahan's blood boiled. Betrayal. The next morning, he stormed into the village square. "Ojibona has been helping the shadows," he announced. The crowd gasped, but Ojibona only smiled. "And what proof do you have, Hunter?" he asked calmly. "I saw you," Allahan shouted. Ojibona laughed. "Perhaps the forest has messed with your mind." The villagers murmured, unsure who to believe. But in their hearts, they knew shadows didn't come without help. The tension in Igbo was unbearable. No one trusted anyone anymore. Even children played in silence, their laughter replaced by fear. Then one evening, a sound pierced the air. Boom. Everyone froze. The sound came again. Boom. Boom. It was Apanal, the sacred drum. The villagers rushed to the square, where Ojah, the drummer, was sitting with wide eyes. "I didn't touch it," he exclaimed. "It's playing itself." The drumbeat was steady and loud, but strange. It didn't sound like a celebration. It sounded like a call. Chief Balagan stepped forward. "Apanal is speaking. We must listen." The drumbeat slowed, each strike echoing like a heartbeat. Then it stopped completely. In the silence that followed, a low, rumbling voice emerged. "You ignored the warnings," the voice said. "Now you must pay the price." Before anyone could react, the ground shook violently. Cracks spread through the square, and a dark mist rose from the earth. The village erupted into chaos. The dark mist spread quickly, swallowing huts and fields. People screamed and ran, but there was nowhere to hide. Allahan grabbed his bow, but he knew arrows were useless against shadows. "Everyone, to the shrine," he shouted. The villagers rushed toward the oracle's shrine, their last hope. The oracle was already there, waiting. "You cannot fight shadows with weapons," she said. "Only your hearts can defeat them." "What does that mean?" Allahan shouted, frustrated. "It means you must stand together," the oracle said. "If you let fear divide you, the shadows will win." The villagers looked at one another. Ojibona stepped forward, his head bowed. "I betrayed you," he admitted. "I thought I could save myself by helping them. I was wrong." Chief Balagan placed a hand on Ojibona's shoulder. "You are still one of us. Let us face this together." The villagers formed a circle, holding hands as the mist closed in. They chanted the name of Olajimer, their voices rising above the chaos. The shadows screeched, their forms twisting and shrinking. The mist began to fade, and the ground stopped shaking. When it was over, the village was still standing. Aponal's drums sat silent once more, but the villagers knew its voice had saved them. From that day, Igbo was stronger than ever. The shadows never returned, but the story of their unity became a lesson passed down through generations.